Excellent, and welcome to the TADSummit Innovators. I have somebody I've known for over a decade now. Time flies. Vladimir, please, Vladimir, introduce yourself.
All right, well, thanks, Alan. And my pleasure to be here, your guest today, and my pleasure to talk to this great audience of the podcast. Well, my name is Vladimir. We know each other with Alan for many, many years. And my personal background initially is telecom. That's, I guess, part of the reason why I'm here with you today.
Yep.
But I'm probably maybe a little bit less traditional guest for this podcast because I've been changing industries for my career.
Yeah.
And after spending about 15 years with telecom, going all the way from the traditional TDM to H323 to SIP to WebRTC and being a part of WebRTC community for many years and
Yes.
still these days.
Yep.
I switched to IoT and then eventually I went to the automotive industry, which I'm now a part of, dealing with all different types of software that runs in modern vehicles. And we probably can talk a little bit about that. So
Absolutely. Yeah, that'll be very interesting.
So that's my background.
Cool. No, that's excellent. So definitely, and one of the things that we've been chatting about recently is voice bots. And
Right.
voice bots in automotive, it's a very natural interface because, yes, there's a screen, but a screen's a distraction. I always find when I'm like, I've got the directions and I'm looking over at the directions on the car, I sort of, I'm veering over to where I'm looking, so
That's
voice
true.
is a so much more natural interface so you can focus on the road ahead. So I'm just interested in your experiences, within Panasonic Automotive around how you view the importance of voice interfaces and where you see them, gaining broader adoption and some of the challenges that they face as well.
Absolutely, Alan. It's paramount. I would say that you're right. It's natural interface that's very well suited specifically for automotive because we want to avoid any sort of distraction for the driver.
Yep.
But I mean, they have to keep their focus on the road, but they still have to have an ability to maybe to talk to someone to get information. Then that voice type of interfaces is the most natural, I would say,
Yes,
for this
exactly.
situation. And for us specifically, we've been supporting this type of voice-based interfaces for many years, basically.
Yeah.
And we actually, just to mention, last year at CES, Panasonic and Amazon, we presented a joint demo of how you can have not one but multiple voice assistants in the car at the same time.
Exactly.
Which itself was very interesting experience for us, and I've been part of this development myself, so I can talk a little bit more about that. So basically, these days, you oftentimes get a voice assistant, or you may get a voice assistant in your car, just embedded in your car system.
Yeah.
But then, of course, everybody also has their smartphone, which they connect to the car, and they may be using CarPlay, or they may be using Android Auto, depending on which operating system their smartphone is running. And then those have their own integrated voice assistants.
Yeah.
And you may be willing to use one or the other in the car. But then it becomes a little bit problematic because if you have two, which one you should activate, how you switch between them, how we can ensure that they do not interfere with each other.
Exactly.
It's an interesting problem, and this is something that we've been able to resolve together with our colleagues from Amazon. And we ended up actually releasing a white paper on that September last year.
Yeah.
Yes, so people who are interested in that, certainly I'm recommending them to check that one. That reflects on all the experience and our recommendations to the industry about
Excellent.
this
I'll
type
add
of
that
integration.
link to the white paper in the blog for this.
Yeah, absolutely.
People can read it
because
it's a very good white paper.
Maybe a good idea. And so we reflect on that experience. But I can tell you now, these days, as I'm looking back at that, I think it's becoming even more interesting and potentially even more important going forward, because we now see this shift from the more traditional, let's say, older generation of the voice assistants that we had, the older version of Siri, the Google's assistant and all this stuff, to the newer ones based on Gen AI, which of course is big for everyone these days in all the industries. And then Gen AI combined with the voice interface brings the whole experience to the new level. But then it's also will be very natural that you may get even more voice assistants potentially available to you in different situations. And you will have to find a way to interact with them, switch between them,
Yes.
and maybe interestingly, even let them kind of hand over specific activities or tasks to each other, which is another example, by the way, which Amazon
Yes.
showed with one of the automotive vendors previously,
Yeah.
just to the two Alexa and they call it Bob, two voice assistants, just handing over
Yeah.
the activities to each other. That will be more interesting. And another thing that I would like to mention, and I'm switching a little bit from the voice interfaces to Gen AI
Yep.
here, but that's an interesting related thing. I'm just about 1.5 months back from the it was called Generative AI Expo in Florida,
Mm-hmm.
which was really great. Many interesting discussions around Gen AI. And one of the people there, one of the speakers, he was presenting a very interesting initiative,
Mm-hmm.
which is just evolving. And I probably can add that to the chat
Yes, please.
for
Yeah.
this podcast as well if people are interested. But what they're trying to do, they are trying to create a sort of common interface and API that allows different Gen AI based agents interact with each other. Because for Gen AI in general, not specific to voice interfaces, but Gen AI as a technology in general,
Mm-hmm.
it also is very natural to let them pass control to each other or even send requests to each other
Okay.
and interact, because they can naturally be specialized. You know, you
Yeah.
have just generic purpose Gen AI technologies like ChatGPT, for example,
Mm-hmm.
but oftentimes you can have those that are pre-trained on specific subsets of data, but they can just excel in those things, like, you know, the code-related ones or ones related to specific domains and areas,
Yeah.
like maybe insurance or medical or biological, you know,
Yep.
scientific, whatever.
Yep.
And then it's totally natural that they will just hand over and get information from each other to get a better end user experience. So that was a long answer to your question, but I think
No,
we
no,
touched on
no. But
several
yeah,
technologies
yeah.
here.
Because I remember when Amazon had the little Echo Auto
All right.
Bob. Well, yeah, it's a small device, and the experience it was never ideal. It is a hard problem in the car because you've got all the background noise
Right.
and you've got, passengers. Passengers were one of the most annoying things because, of course, with Alexa, she recognizes all the different voices in the family,
Right.
but she just makes a point of, struggling with my wife, and she takes that personally.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, there's always that standard responses. Oh, if you have feedback, you can go to the Alexa app and, oh, Alexa,
Exactly.
oh, you
Exactly.
suck. I just quickly looked up because I have an Echo on my desk here, so I was making sure
Mm.
that the red light was on and it's not listening. But yeah, yeah, it's good that Amazon's working with the manufacturers that are building the tech into cars, because that first experience I wouldn't say is ideal,
Yes.
for a
Yeah.
variety of reasons. Now, what are some of the popular use cases in mixing up the different agents within the car?
Oh, absolutely. That again, that relates to the fact that they may be coming from different sources. Like, you
Yeah.
know, we have this voice assistant integrated in the car, and then it may be very natural that any requests that you may give to the assistant specific to the car, like you want to know more about a subsystem in the car, you may
Yep.
want some assistance, you may want to contact the vendor of that car, eventually get some support
Okay.
and
Yeah.
service.
Yeah.
You would hand it over to that embedded assistant box. It's essentially a part of the car itself, if you will,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
At
Yeah.
the very same time, if you also connect your smartphone and that has Siri on that
Hmm.
smartphone,
Yeah.
then all the things that well, Siri knows about you because it's a part of your daily
That's
activities
it.
on the
Yeah. The
smartphone.
personalization. Yeah.
Right, exactly. It's totally natural that with those requests you will be using that, but maybe not the one on the car. That of course depends on the situation, but I
Yeah.
would see that sort of natural division between them.
Absolutely. I mean, for me, there's this big, thick owner's manual that I never read. It's only when
Right.
there's a specific problem and it's trying to find it through the organization. And given there's already a voice interface there, and for the car, it should already know everything, on
It's
how to
true.
operate. So just to be able to ask, how do I set up another phone? And the fact is that I've used up all the spaces. You know how it is, because some of the interfaces are quite old. You only allowed a number of basically phones to connect. So, and then it says, well, which one do you want me to delete? I could delete this one, this one, this one, this one, because it's like, how it is. I get a new phone,
Right.
connect, and it's like, well, yeah, delete that one and that one. It would just be so much easier than having to press keys and then press the wrong key and then have to go back to the beginning of the
Right.
menu. So yeah,
Yeah.
for me, it is a dream, but I'm interested a lot in timeline. When do you think we'll get to that point where it's no longer awful menus that go on forever, and it is truly the car understands itself and you can just ask it to do stuff?
Well, I think, from my perspective, it may be not that far away. It again, it will be reliant in many ways on the Gen AI
Yeah.
technology,
Okay.
which evolves extremely quickly. I would say
Yes.
we just
Yeah.
see this tremendous progress over just less than 2 years
Oh, well, yeah, it's
since
almost like daily. It's like a new,
exactly, yes,
sort
something
of
happens daily. Something
exactly.
happens daily.
Yeah,
You're
exactly.
absolutely right. So from that perspective, I think we actually come into this stage fairly quickly now. But Alan, I would make your question broader from this
Yeah,
perspective, because
please.
obviously it's not just about cars; it's about
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, getting back to our telecom roots and contact center experience in many
Yeah.
ways, these old-fashioned voice menus, press one for that, press two for that, press three. I still see it these days. It's so annoying, especially
Yes.
given the fact that many of these menus may be intentionally designed in a way where you can never go through them and get to the point where you can talk to the real person, which oftentimes you want. I don't know if they
Yeah.
do it intentionally or not, but I mean, the way they design is just terrible
Yes.
sometimes for some of these companies. And certainly changing that to Gen AI based experience. And by the way, again, going back to that conference in Florida,
Yeah.
just 1.5 months ago, there were a number of talks from the contact center vendors about what they do in that and the great results they're getting from that. It's really
Sure.
fascinating. I think that changes the experience tremendously
Yeah.
already right now these days. So for me, I think it maybe just a couple of years, maybe 3 years before that becomes a reality, maybe even sooner than that. And I would say it may be not even that much just about the Gen AI technology itself as such, because it's pretty capable of doing many of these things right now. It
Exactly.
may be about just augmenting that with a few other technologies which are already there, like better voice cancellation, better voice isolation. So
Yes.
pretty much like us ourselves, we are able to distinguish specific voices and people talking to us based on
Yes.
many things like visual clues. I
Yeah.
can see when person talking to me, I can see how he or she articulates and just use that as an extra cue for myself. Some of these extra things, we see them becoming available for this artificial intelligence based agents themselves.
Exactly.
And that will improve the experience overall, because they will be able to much better distinguish the situation when you talk to that agent versus when you talk to someone else in the car, for example.
Exactly. Exactly. Because that for me was part of the biggest frustration
Right.
is everybody's communicating naturally, but the agent is very focused, the AI agent, and when it's getting multiple inputs from people, and also, I mean, like turn a conversation, I feel is pretty sorted now. I think it's more filtering on the background, so you just get to the particular person that's talking without all the noise, and then
Exactly.
I think you just can't stop humans being humans. And whenever there's basically a robot involved, people just can't help themselves but to like poke at it and test it and make it fail.
That's very true. And that, by the way, brings us to the other very interesting topic that we discussed, and the question that I asked to many of the contact center vendors at
Hmm.
that conference, because they were promoting that experience that they've got recently, just
Yeah,
bringing Gen AI based technologies into the contact center and
yeah,
voice menus and all this stuff. And I asked them, when you do that, guys, do you provide any explicit or implicit cue to the person that the person is actually talking not to the real human,
yes,
but to an AI automated agent? And it's interesting because some of them do, some of them do not.
Correct. Yeah.
And I don't know exactly if it's the right thing, because to me, the person should be aware
Hmm.
that
Oh, yeah.
they're using that AI-based agent, because the agents become much better,
Yeah.
and the synthesized voice quality, even the way they mimic, intonation, emotions and stuff, it becomes much
Exactly.
better. So sometimes it may be hard to distinguish between, are you talking to the real person now or not?
Exactly.
And you
Because
should
they
know that.
use cues. I mean, you get like Vapi that I sent to you. While you're talking to the voice bot, it's giving you feedback in terms of
Right.
just the little verbal cues. And
Yeah.
then if you stop and it's done a confirmation that it understood what you said, there's a pause. Well, they finished talking, and then so it's really interesting how they're able to mash up not just the verbal cues, so you know there's somebody there, but also even when it's just assumed that the person's going to continue talking, to do a timeout to say, okay, let's check understanding, and then you move that to an action. And what was really interesting to the point you just raised about revealing if it's a real person or an agent, we had one of the sponsors for TADAC Open was SignalWire. They have the SignalWire AI gateway, sorry, and they built up one. It was a delivery. Was it delivery? Well, it was a bot that would interrogate to gather quotes for
Right.
a
Yeah.
move. And what was really interesting was the person that was taking the call and taking the details of what the move and the items that needed to be moved actually said, am I talking to an AI bot?
Mm.
Actually asked that, and the bot replied yes. And the conversation continued in taking the list of all the stuff that was required to be moved. So I thought it was interesting that they didn't reveal it, but then if it was asked, it revealed it. But that didn't stop the conversation.
That's right.
Conversation continued.
That's right.
It was just, okay, fair enough, let's get this sort of request complete. So it
Oh,
is.
absolutely. Absolutely. That's very true. And that's also another interesting point that I was discussing during the conference. One of the persons during a tech talk gave a very good comment saying, when you have a range of if you range user experiences, talking to the automated AI-based agent versus real person, if you try to put it on a sort of scale in terms
Yeah,
of
spectrum, yeah.
people's satisfaction from doing that, then if you can get the Gen AI based interface done properly, then that probably is the best thing that people
Yes.
can get.
Yeah.
Then after that, they would prefer to talk to the real human.
Hmm.
And then last on that one is again Gen AI based things done improperly
Correct.
in a worst kind of way, if you will. So it's interesting that if you do Gen AI in a very good way, then people would prefer to talk to Gen AI rather than the real persons.
Exactly.
On the other hand, if the Gen AI is not doing things well, then people will rank it worse than if they
Yes.
would be talking to the real person. So that
Exactly.
kind of
Because
spectrum is
especially if they
interesting
try
too.
to force you to a script and you're saying,
Exactly.
and it's like,
Yes.
no, no, this is not relevant. This script isn't
Yeah.
relevant.
Yeah.
This is my problem. Will you listen to me? And of course, that problem isn't in the script. So it always keeps forcing you back. And that's just design issue. It's nothing to do with,
That's true. That's
but
true.
it's a very interesting time because of the rapid evolution. Now, so you've got the call center, you've got the automotive. What are some of the other areas where you see voice interfaces popping up?
Well, I mean, all the type of embedded systems, basically,
Gotcha.
just like you said, all these small devices that you get these days, not just your smartphones and your laptops, but
Yeah.
those extra small assistants that you get
Well, like
everywhere.
TVs. And again, the interface for doing setup on a smart TV is awful.
That's true.
Quite often I just give up and I just do basically a factory reset and things seem to work again. Again, to be able to just, because quite a lot of the controllers include a mic on there. So that you get actually very good audio to the
True.
voice control. So yeah, you're right. There's a whole range of devices coming up where voice could be a far more natural and straightforward interface for most people.
Of course, of course. And then, the other thing that I would like to mention here, you probably know because we interacted on that previously, and actually was part of one of my hackathons, with maybe not the one that you ran, a different one, but actually that was the one in Chicago. I was working there on a technology for the colorblind people.
Yes. Yes.
Just applying that special filter to the video stream that was received. So what I was going to mention here, I'm very passionate about the accessibility technologies for many years, and how we can use modern advances in technology to make life easier for people with different sorts of disabilities. That's something that I was focusing on. I'm still focused on that. I love talk about that topic more. And so from that specific perspective, I see tremendous potential for the Gen AI technology in this area, voice interfaces based on that for people with low sight, for example, or blind people. It's fantastic what they can do now compared to what they do before without having to rely on a live person, right?
Yes.
Applying this technology could potentially can make it so much better, so much easier, their life or daily experience. That's where I really want to see.
A telecom analyst who's blind, and one of the apps he uses, it involves machine vision. So, and it's dumb stuff. It's like coffee machine repair. The coffee machine's beeping, something's not right, and he can just show his phone at the scene, and that'll come back and provide advice around the tray or the carafe is empty or isn't in place, or dumb stuff like the carafe isn't aligned, it's not put on the tray fully. Dumb stuff like that, because there's a cable or something catching in the back. All the stuff that, as a visioned person, it's really easy, but when you don't have that, or it's just impaired vision, that can be immensely frustrating. So I agree. Absolutely. It's both voice and vision can have a major impact on helping people live just like the rest of us. So cool.
Yes.
No, that's great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, did you manage to go to Google Next?
Yes, I was there just this week. I'm back from that conference.
Anything interesting catch your eye there?
Well, I mean, tons of things. I mean, Google made a huge amount of announcements there on different things. And of course, the conference initially is just all about cloud offering, but in reality, all these conferences, the Amazon's one last year, Google's one just this week, it's all about Gen AI. I mean, 99.9% is all about Gen AI these days. So all interesting stuff about that. A bunch of very good and inspiring technical talks about what's going there, but also a number of non-technical ones about exactly just like what we discussed, how people use this technology, how they apply it, what lessons they learn from that.
Cool.
And I can tell you, one of the things that was maybe one of the most fascinating talks during this conference was a panel session with 3 representatives from different kinds of government-based organizations, the local municipalities and stuff like that, how they're using Gen AI right now. I love that session. I mean, it's fantastic to see, because typically we think that government always kind of lags behind a little bit, right?
Exactly.
This kind of feeling. There's still that all the technology. And by the way, the session in some way reflected that, because obviously there is a problem like that. It's a real thing, but it was very interesting to see one of those experiences where the local departments in one of the municipalities here in the States, who are responsible for tracking on the employment of people and matters related to that. During the COVID time, because of the situation, they've got a pile of requests related to that, because people would be asking for social help and all that stuff. And something that was surprising to me to learn. I mean, it's not like I don't know these things, but when I see these things, it's just an eye opener for me all these days. The technology that they used at that point of time, it was still an IBM's mainframe from 70s, run by COBOL code. Believe it or not, because when I see things like
it's working, don't touch it.
it's 2020, it's still mainframes and code. So the person who at that point joined the department as a head she was trying to transform that with Google's help. And during just about 2 years, they came from that stage, the mainframe and COBOL code and all the requests. They only accepted requests in two ways. One was through the mail, traditional mail, not emails, and the other was analog fax. Nothing else. You only had two choices. So they've got a pile of those papers everywhere during that period. And so when that person, when she stepped in as the leader of that department, in just 2 years with Google's help, she transformed it to experience based on Gen AI. So just leaping from the mainframes of 70s to Gen AI just in a few years, and they were able to completely handle all this huge pile of them.
All the faxes
and everything.
So they converted that, so they did the OCR and
they kind of that, So they created a system that will be able to just recognize what the request will be about, and they pre-trained an agent that would be knowledgeable in a way about all these matters, right? And that AI-based system will be pre-screening all these requests. And all the things that will be easy and clear, she would just process it mostly themselves. And only those ones that will be tricky, she would leave that for the human person to actually handle and review and take some actions on that. And there was a much smaller percentage of those. So they were able to handle all that and get all that stat that was accumulated over the COVID time just in a matter of several months. Other than that, she said it will be impossible for the next 10 years possibly.
Exactly. Just taking advantage of the exponential, because you can just have all these agents running in parallel. You use the resources you need for that time to just clear the backlog so that you can get back down to a performant operation in supporting the community. So that's a great example in terms of using Gen AI to just stuff that's clear, just get the backlog out, just get it out as quickly as possible so that it can then focus where, for whatever reason, it's a little bit more complex, or it could be it's a case that has several parts that brings different departments together, where maybe the workflow isn't fully integrated yet on the cloud-based service. So that's when when departments have to talk to each other in local government, they don't.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true as well. But the other exciting thing is that now that they've done it, that's experience that they've got, their lessons learned, the way they've done it, it's so positive. It's so showing off in a positive way that other municipalities all across the states, they try and just to learn from that and follow, and that's great. That's great. That's one of the great things. And the other thing that I will mention, one of the general trends that I see this year. So last year at Google's Cloud Next, when Google was discussing the way and sharing their experience about how developers inside Google started using Gen AI-based tools for code generation and all these things that are very near and dear to myself and you and all the other guys from the software industry, like how they do that. When they discussed it at the panel session last year, and they tried to ask a general question like, what's your perspective, like audience, what's your perspective on that? Do you think that, just developers will fully embrace these Gen AI-based code generation tools and the stuff? The audience was essentially split by half. And part of the audience was saying, no, absolutely, they will go, and we're already using that, and it's great experience, and obviously everyone will be using that. While the other part of the audience was kind of skeptical, saying, we're not sure if the actual software developers, the senior ones, will ever let the technology just take part of what they're doing on a daily basis. This year, it's not even a question. They asked the same question basically during the same panel session. No one even argued about developers using that. So this
it's
year,
productivity.
the focus,
the key is you still need to be an experienced developer, because the code's there, but does it? You need to understand it in terms of it's being created, but does it do what we asked? And is it conformant with our policies and compliance and all the rest that gets hidden in there? So you still need an experienced eye to review. But I agree. I think that several companies I work with that last year were using Gen AI code generation. It's to the point now where they've got a lot of confidence around where it works really well and where they still need to review to make sure it's going to be it's where it's in it critical. system, where you need to just, well, there could be a financial penalty, let's put it like that, if you haven't implemented certain controls.
That's very true. But I think so. So this year, basically this year, the shift that I see again compared to last year.
Yeah.
Last year, the conferences was all about just all these things is there. Let's see how we can use that. For example, to generate the code, and other results are good. Well, they're exciting. Everyone was excited about it. So now this year, I see a shift to a much more pragmatic. View, which I actually like to see, where it's like, okay, we now know that we have these tools that allow people to generate parts of the code potentially, which is plain, English language input request, for example, to do that, and it works great and it really helps. But it's just a part of the whole tool chain for a developer and the organization inside the company, right? And so they, I think, gave a sort of great metaphor during that conference, saying, what we see right now, you just change from the older way where you create all your code manually to this new one where there is a Gen AI-based assistant helping you. It's like, changing your old car to something like a Formula One, this super speedy body, but then putting that Formula One in the crowded streets of New York, where it's just stuck in the traffic. And from that perspective, the question is whether it's worth it or not, because to unblock it and unleash its full potential, it's not enough to just generate the code like that. The Gen AI then must be integrated everywhere, the initial requests, code reviews, the process of creating documentation, the testing of them and validation of the software that you create, the unit tests, functional tests, everything. So when Gen AI becomes a part of this whole tool chain, then it makes sense. Then it starts showing off the real transformation that Gen AI promises us in terms of being the software development industry. So I think that's another major takeaway from this year's conference. I certainly see this shift in mentality about how we discuss.
Well, it's always it's that learning curve. You sort of say it's really full, okay, but now let's get it across the whole process. And then it's like, oh well, we can use it here. We had some problems here. So as it slowly permeates and becomes sort of business as usual, and that's where we are in a lot of these Gen AI discussions. Is it can do some things amazingly, but can it be used across the whole process, the end-to-end workflow, to improve significantly the overall performance of the team, of the business. But that's really great insight. So coming up on time, we've gone on a bit longer than I thought we would. But again, Vladimir, this has been great to catch up. It's been way too long. And definitely we'll have you on again to discuss around voice bots and their application and more broadly, Gen AI. So again, thank you so much.
Thank you, Alan.